In our last episode, we explored a bizarre encounter that took place in rural Kentucky during the summer of 1955, when a frightened family claimed they were under siege by strange, small humanoid beings. The incident left an impression that still echoes decades later. But what if such a phenomenon didn't end there? What if, as recently as 2012, a new case emerged, eerily similar and just as chilling? My name is Dr. David Christie, begins a letter sent to a paranormal investigator. Your contact was shared with me by a trusted acquaintance who assured me that you're equipped to handle very unusual situations. I'm convinced you'll be more interested in what's happening here than any compensation I might offer. David described living in a secluded house near the West Virginia-Kentucky border, where for 6 months his family had been terrorized, each night, by strange beings he believed were not of this world. These creatures, he said, were small, childlike in height, but grotesque in form. No facial features other than slick, oversized eyes and mouths that lacked lips. They chirped to one another, peered through bedroom windows, and attempted entry into the house after dark. His dog had gone missing. The local police showed little concern, brushing it off as wildlife activity and referring him to the Game Commission. But David believed they were coming from an abandoned mine shaft on his land. Though he owned weapons, fear kept him from venturing. Inside, in his words, the mine needs to be sealed off. And I believe you might be the one who can help me do that. That was the first message sent to Greg Newkirk, founder of a paranormal website. At first glance, Greg assumed it was a prank. But the emails kept coming. Greg had once been part of a ghost hunting team called Ghost Hunters Incorporated, though the group had disbanded years earlier. Their website, long neglected, still received the occasional message, which Greg occasionally checked when he saw David's email. Clearly unrelated to ghosts, it stood out. Greg replied, admitting he had no experience with extraterrestrials or demolitions, but was willing to help if David could share more. He didn't expect a reply, but the next morning, another message arrived. Thank you for your openness, it began. David explained how a mutual friend with fringe interests had referred him to someone named Terry R. Rist, who in turn recommended Greg. He lived near the town of Hellier, Kentucky, close to the West Virginia and Virginia borders. The area was deeply rural, and neighbors were few and far between. David had moved there for solitude, but instead found chaos. Initially, it was odd footprints in the snow, vaguely human but with strange proportions. At first, he thought a single creature was responsible, but over time, it became clear there were several. His dog became terrified of being outdoors after dark. Things escalated. His children's toys were taken. His shed was disturbed. Despite police reports, nothing was done. Then his 5-year-old daughter mentioned the kids with no hair. She'd watched them playing in the yard the night before. When questioned, she described them as bald like her grandfather and unclothed. That same day, a wreath from inside the house was found stuffed into the mailbox. David installed motion-triggered floodlights. The activity stopped, briefly by late February. His daughter said the bald kids had come back. That night, she screamed, claiming they were tapping on her window. David found disturbed soil under the glass. Police came again. An officer said it was just animals. But then came March 17th. Around 1:30 a.m., David's dog woke him up, whining. At the back door, the floodlights were on. He looked out the kitchen window and saw a shadow on the lawn, but not the figure that cast it. Then he heard rustling, someone rummaging through a box on the porch. Acting on instinct, he pounded the window and shouted. The porch door slammed open. Then came a guttural chirping sound, not unlike a skunk, but more vocal. Multiple figures were now moving on his lawn, chirping at one another. Then David noticed something by the flower bed. A small figure, pale, hairless, standing just 4 feet tall. Its skin was sickly, and its face lacked detail except for those huge, glassy eyes. It had no nose and a slit of a mouth. As it chirped, its mouth didn't move. The sounds came from within. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't a child. He froze as the creature hopped toward the others, and they vanished into the forest. David counted 5 in total. Since that night, his dog had vanished. He later found various missing belongings scattered near the entrance to the abandoned mine. David had no doubt these beings were using the mine as a lair. He ended his message by offering Greg full access to the site anonymity guaranteed, and compensation for travel, if Greg would help him seal the mine. Greg was intrigued but cautious. He asked for photographic proof. Then something caught his attention: the name Terry Wrist. Greg didn't recall meeting anyone by that name, but a quick search revealed it wasn't likely a real name at all. In two books, The Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts and The Secret Rituals of the Men in Black, the pseudonym Terry Wrist appeared in interviews with a military veteran who claimed to be part of a covert team tasked with wiping out underground alien bases in the southern U.S. Their entrances, hidden in caves and abandoned mines. Greg still wasn't sure what to believe. Then, more silence from David, until another email landed weeks later. "My apologies for the delay," it read. "The situation got worse. We moved in with family for safety." He had briefly returned to the house with his brother-in-law. The property was untouched, suggesting the creatures were only active when his family was present. But they discovered a fresh trail of prints leading into the forest. He attached photographs of the tracks, three-toed, barefoot, and strange in structure. Experts later noted the presence of dermal ridges, skin-like lines on the soles, akin to fingerprints, which are incredibly difficult to fake. Greg asked for more evidence. David responded quickly. They returned last night. He included new images, this time with a measuring stick placed beside the footprints, confirming they were half the size of a human foot. 3 toes, no heel, bipedal. But what came next was far more compelling. 3 photographs of the creatures themselves. They first showed little. The second, enhanced for contrast, seemed to show a gray, humanoid figure in profile with a large head, an eye, and a hint of a mouth. The third image was clearer, revealing a being peering out from behind a tree. The shape of its head, shoulder, and arm could be made out. Yet still, it wasn't enough to draw any firm conclusions. After that, David Christie vanished. Greg tried everything to find him: emails, messages, even local records. But there was no trace. Still, Greg wasn't done. He reached out to police departments near Hellier. While small towns had no local police, the State Department confirmed a call fitting David's description, though they offered no details. Census records showed no one named David Christie in Hellier. But Greg did discover that dozens of old mine shafts existed in the area, many near properties with creeks or streams, just like David described. Still, without a specific address, the trail went cold. Months passed. Then, while filming a paranormal documentary titled Strange Encounters with his wife Dana, Greg visited Brown Mountain, North Carolina, home of the mysterious Brown Mountain Lights. A friend there mentioned a nearby cave believed to be an alien base entrance. They explored it for fun and discovered a massive, unnatural boulder sealing off a passageway deeper into the cave. They thought little of it until February 4th, 2013, an email appeared in Greg's inbox. The sender? Terry Wrist. "Why did you stop when you were so close?" It read. "I have something for you." 1 week. Greg was stunned. He had never publicly mentioned Hellier, the cave, or specific details. That a week later, another message came. Hellier was only a symptom. The ink and black are isolated. Still in the third order. Mia, for every closed door, a window opens. The door is closed. The window is open. Use the numbers. Attached was an old, crumpled page with 16 digits to AT first. It meant nothing. Then a friend suggested they could be GPS coordinates. They were. Entering them into Google Maps zoomed directly to the exact cave entrance Greg and Dana had visited, where the boulder blocked their way. Greg felt sick. How could anyone have known? He was left to consider what all this meant. Could the creatures David described be the same as the Kentucky Goblins of 1955? The resemblance was uncanny: small humanoids, glowing eyes, strange movements. But this modern case spanned months, not hours. Were these mechanical beings in suits rather than biological entities? Could the ears described in 1955 actually be gear? Kentucky's geography is riddled with caves and old mines, and reports of these creatures have surfaced elsewhere in the region for decades. One legend speaks of the Little White Men of Kentucky. In 1990, a 14-year-old named Donald Patton was playing near his family's land. His father came out and shouted for both him and his cousin Eric to come inside. But Donald had been alone. "Then who were the two standing behind you?" his father asked. He described seeing two pale children standing just behind his son, 3.5 feet tall, dressed all in white. The figures vanished behind an outbuilding. Greg eventually theorized that these beings may have taken refuge in caves after a crash, or perhaps had lived underground long before that. The Hopi tribe of the American Southwest even speak of ant people, strange, pale beings who lived underground and helped them survive cataclysms. In the end, no one ever found David Christie. No one ever proved his claims true.